and all these horrible ideas, and all of a sudden then we get letters from the other person's lawyer, and
the fight's on.
The fight was on, just from an emotional...
I have no doubt that was the same thing with my ex-wife. I mean, she's not a bad person. But, she would have been getting instructions or receiving advice. And, I've got to tell you, some of the things that were suggested to me through this process, like, perhaps we should be looking at hiring a private investigator. Are you mad? I just told you. She's a good mum. You're not going to find anything there, so I'm certainly not going to want to go down that path. It's pretty simple. I want to have her for this amount of time, and she thinks I should have that. That's what really, And she has her reasons for that, right or wrong.
Yeah.
But, she has her opinion. She's a mother.
Yeah.
So that's our dispute was just purely...
And did you look at mediation in terms of discussing what she wanted and why?
We did, and it's part of the court process that you've got to do that. Unfortunately, though, we were having real issues communicating through that process. And I think predominantly when I consider, all in hindsight, and perhaps, and I don't want to speculate for what it was like for my ex, but I can only imagine that, when you're in a situation and she feels that she's doing the right thing by our daughter, and then you're getting hit with court papers from lawyers, going, and it's very aggressive. And you're reading all this. And then they say, well, by the way, now after we've finished attacking you there, we've got to go do mediation. So, you're not going to be in the right framework, are you, to talk? I mean, I'm comfortable in communicating. And it's not, and so that's good for me, but not everyone's like that, So we didn't do real well with that. And it was done, I felt, because it was just part of the process. Didn't have to be an outcome.
Yeah, you just turn up.
And the thing is too, the mediation was there, but it held no weight or bearing. So you sort of sit there and go, well, why are we here? I've got lawyers here. Why are lawyers in the mediation, for crying out loud? But that's the process. So all of a sudden it's not about having a real intelligent conversation handled by a professional mediator. It's a lawyer's. Oh, what about this and what about that? And, it defeats the whole purpose, I would have felt, if it was just mum and dad in a room with a professional.
Yeah.
Perhaps the outcome may have been different. It might have been so, aggressive, I guess, or challenging.
Yeah, because it seems like, which is why we know something I think is really interesting, sort of that you're doing now. Like at the base level, it's about the two parents. Because it's the parents, it's the issues between the parents.
Always the parent, without a doubt.
And so, at a base level, what you need to do is repair some damage that has happened within that relationship so they can see how important the child is and make it right for them, put their own stuff aside. Very difficult,
well,
obviously.
As you know, mate, I took a different approach to this. This whole thing has affected my family for 12 years. And it affects your current partners and kids and, the outside family. And I just thought, it's got to stop. That's it. So I think that I felt I needed to take an innovative approach to the issue. And to me, I agree with you. It's nothing. I didn't feel it was about it is certainly about my daughter. Everything's about my daughter. But it was more about recognising that our relationship was just that poor, that we could not talk. We couldn't have a conversation about, she's off to school, we're doing this. Simple things that we should be able to do. And I felt that needed to be addressed, and urgently. So I, again, as part of the court process, we had another mediation, again with the lawyers. But what I chose to do was take a stronger approach through those negotiations and dictated a pathway. And what I felt, and when I considered this and I looked at it in whole, is that who is the best person? I considered who is the best person that can manage this scenario. Or if it was a risk analysis, you would call it a risk. And the risk is that my daughter gets irreversibly affected by a mother and father because they're too dumb to get together and talk. So it's so you look at it from a risk model point of view, and currently we've got lawyers. Now, are the lawyers, or is the family court system the right system to mitigate this risk? No. Fuck no. So who is the most qualified that can handle these things? So I sit down and I consider this, and it's a psychiatrist, someone that has the relevant education, that deals with children and families, that can create a pathway to find a solution. So through that mediation process, we managed to agree on the fact that firstly it was that our daughter was to get some assistance because she was feeling anxiety because of her parents, and then that was our first step. So we all went and saw her, which is the first time we've really all been in the room together, which was a good step forward. And at that point, we were able to. I felt that there was, it was a way on how do I repair this relationship? And I felt we needed to do something big to build a little bit of trust, just a start. So, the obvious choice for me was, let's tear up these family court orders. They're not worth anything anyway, but I feel a demonstration of how I feel, and which is interesting process in itself, because the lawyers don't want you to do that, which is really funny. I'm dealing with that at the moment because they've got the orders need to be formally rescinded, and again, and I'm going to have to go into some sort of a legal framework to remove them. But I'm getting tremendous amount of pushback from the legal fraternity, and I'm rather looking forward to standing up in front of the judge at that particular time and answer his honest questions about why I'm doing this. And I'm going to be very clear. So that's where I'm at. That's the approach I've taken. Will it work? I don't know. Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean it's so good. I think it's just, I think it's the smartest. It'll be the best thing. But can I just say, probably
I think so. It's got to be. How can you have a child growing up and mummy and daddy just can't even talk? Like, jeez.
Yeah,
Can you imagine that pressure? Awful, isn't it? So, yeah, I feel it's a step forward, and we're actually having conversations. We don't ring each other up and say g'day, but we there since then, my daughter's come over and spent some time back at the family home, and we're always talking on the phone and those sorts of things, regardless of all of this. But her mother and I at drop-off times are having a positive conversation for the first time in 10 years. That's good.
Yeah,
It's a way. It's a start, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, those court orders and the court, that pressure that it puts on everyone to fucking protect yourself and hate the other person.
Oh.
It's really scary, and that's what it does to people.
It's slow and it's cumbersome, and it as I mentioned, it doesn't just affect your child, it affects the parents as well. But then, the outer family gets affected. It took like 8 years to get an outcome, really, on and off with different things, to get to an outcome of significant time, a lot of time, cost. And all whilst this is going on, I was feeling the stress because, you just want to spend time with your child. You just want to be a dad. But, my ex must have been feeling the same. So how does that affect, I know it was affecting my home life. It would have been affecting hers. There's a whole period of time of the level of enjoyment that we should all have in life has been affected to a certain level. That's just dumb. So there needs to be change. It needs to be recognised that this system is failing, and it's failing the kids, the parents, and everyone around them. It's blocked up. I think recently the media has said that there's judges retiring, and of course now the waiting lists are going to be longer. Oh, isn't that wonderful? That's going to really help.
Yeah.